Good morning, Algebra kids. So another lesson today. So let's get started. We have Chapter 9, Lesson 6, and we're going to introduce a new formula today, and this one's called the quadratic formula. And I think this is going to be probably your favorite lesson in the entire chapter, if I had to guess. It's a pretty easy lesson as long as you follow our formula that goes along with it. So again, standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c. And hopefully by this point you have that standard form kind of like engraved in your memory because we've been using it with every lesson so far. And again, with that standard form, the fact that the x is squared tells us that, again, just like we've seen in all of our past lessons, we have two solutions that we're working with. So I draw my parabola. This one's going to be a positive one. My two solutions are where it passes or where it crosses the x-axis. So I've got two spots where it crosses at, and that again is why my x is squared. I've got those two solutions there. So whenever we're trying to find what those two solutions are, so maybe I want to find this x is equal to some number, and this x is also equal to another number. Another way of finding what those two x's are equal to is by using this quadratic formula. And this formula is x equals, and here's our formula. I know this is maybe a little smudged, a little blurry there by using the pen. So let me rewrite it for you. It's going to be x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and that is all over. So this is represented as a fraction. It's all over 2 times a. So it's a pretty lengthy formula, but I'm going to tell you right now, guys, this is a formula you will not have to study. You're not going to have to try and memorize it, and you're not going to have to memorize it because there's a song that goes along with it, and we all love songs. As a matter of fact, this was a formula that to this day I still remember when I was in year C in 8th grade, having this formula introduced to me and having it introduced to me in a song. As a matter of fact, my teacher at the time put a video on the board of a preschooler singing this formula, and her reason behind it was, she goes, if a preschooler can memorize it, you can memorize it as a 8th grader. So you guys, just like my teacher told me back then, I'm going to tell you now, you should be able to memorize this formula because someone that young can memorize it as well. And the song goes, x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And it has kind of the same theme, the same rhyme as some of our nursery rhymes do. And I'm going to upload a video of that song being played by that same preschooler whenever I was in your boat on our classroom page. You can watch that, hear the repetition, hear the melody of it, and maybe it'll help you memorize it as well. But again, even to this day, guys, I don't have to memorize this formula because I know it in my head based on that repetition and that rhyme that kind of goes along with it. So that's the formula that we're working with. Kind of back to this formula, this b, a, and c that we find, that's our standard form. So whatever number a is in my standard form, that's what I'm going to plug into in my formula for a. Same thing with b, and whatever b is up top here. Same thing with c in standard form. I'm going to plug that same number into this formula for c. So you're just grabbing whatever a, b, and c is in your standard form, plugging those numbers into this quadratic formula, and that's going to give you then the answers to those solutions that x equals. So let's try number 1 here. So I have x squared minus 2x minus 8. Now, notice my a here, there's no number out front. So really, we can say this is a 1. So I've got 1 as my a, negative 2 as my b, and negative 8 as my c. Now, sometimes, guys, it helps when you write these out to write those out. So a is equal to 1. B is equal to negative 2. C is equal to negative 8. That way you can just go ahead and look at your A, B, and C, plug those in. So all I did was I looked at my formula, my standard form here, grabbed what each one of them was, make sure you pay attention to the sign in front, and that's going to then tell you what those A, B, and C's are. So I can now plug those into my quadratic formula. Every time you solve one of these problems, I'd be a lot more on the ball with it if we were in class and I was grading your work like you were turning it on loosely. But when you solve these, every single one of them, guys, you need to write the formula down. So your formula, x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. While you're rocking at home, you'll catch yourself singing it as well as you try to memorize it and you try to write the formula down. I'm telling you, it's the easiest way. Now, go through, start plugging it in. So then x equals negative b. So b is negative 2. So I have a negative 2. Now, you may already want to simplify this. Trust me, write it down the first time just how you see it. So negative 2 plus or minus square root b squared. So negative 2 squared minus 4. Now, whenever we get to the spot with A and C, because they're next to one another, when we're putting in these numbers for them, I like to include those in parentheses, just because it kind of separates those numbers. So 4 times A, and then C is negative 8. I'm going to complete my square root symbol. Whoop, there goes my camera. Complete my square root symbol over my 4AC. And then remember, don't forget about your denominator, and that is 2a. So 2 times 1. And again, I like to do parentheses there as well. All right, now I need to go through and I need to simplify. And guys, all this now became is just order of operations. So I'm going to go through here and I'm going to solve this through my different order of operations. I'm going to kind of bring my work up top here just so I have a little more room to work with. So if I take this now, and I simplify it, I have x is equal to negative 2. Well, that's like doing negative 1 times negative 2. So those, again, negative and a negative when they're next to one another create a positive. So it's going to be 2 plus or minus the square root. Well, what are we taking the square root of? We're taking the square root of negative 2 squared, which is the same thing as 4, because I'm doing negative 2 times negative 2. And then, excuse me, then I'm taking negative 4 times 1 times negative 8. So negative 4 times 1 is negative 4 times negative 8 is equal to positive 32. So this is going to turn into a plus 32. Whenever you're underneath your square root symbol, guys, this needs to become a positive. And that's because when you take the square root of a negative number, you end up with imaginary numbers. We haven't got into that yet. So that's kind of a nice way of knowing if you're on the right step here. Whenever you combine like terms underneath your square root, it should ultimately become a positive, which in this case it will. Now I'm going to put this all over 2a. And when I simplify 2 times 1, I get 2. So there we go. We began to simplify this down, and it's looking a little easier now. So I'm going to continue simplifying. And at this point, guys, well, let's take it back. Simplify some more. So we're going to have x is equal to 2 plus or minus, now the square root of 4 plus 32. 4 plus 32 is going to give me 36. So it's like I'm taking the square root of 36. The square root of 36 is 6. And this is over 2. At this point here, remember, we have something that's squared, so I should have two answers for x, because remember, it passes through the x-axis at two spots. This plus or minus is where those two solutions are going to come into. So this is where I would kind of separate those, and I would begin to kind of form those two solutions then. So this is going to turn into x is equal to 2 plus 6 divided by 2, and x is equal to 2 minus 6 divided by 2. And then from there, we're just going to simplify, and that's going to tell me my two different x equals. So whenever I solve the left, it's going to be 2 plus 6, which is 8. 8 divided by 2, that's going to give me 4. So x is equal to 4. And on the right, I have 2 minus 6. Well, when you do 2 minus 6, that's going to give you a negative 4. Negative 4 divided by 2, negative 2. So my two solutions here are 4 and negative 2. Again, a quick way of going through and checking ourselves, if we were to go through on a calculator and just kind of look at this one on a graph, I would have, again, type in your original problem. So it's going to be x squared minus 2x minus 8. You don't necessarily need that 1 out front. If I go to graph, there's my parabola. If I go to second graph, remember we're looking for when x is 0. So whenever, excuse me, not x is 0, again, y is 0, because it's on the x-axis. So again, y is 0. My mistake there. So we're looking whenever y is 0. So here we go. Y is 0 at 4. We arrow the opposite direction, y is 0 at negative 2. And those are the exact same two solutions that we got. So again, we're looking for when y is 0 because it's on the x-axis. And when we're at the x-axis, that is where y is 0. And those two solutions were y is 0 at negative 2. Y is also 0 at 4. All right, so there you go. We've already solved one problem now using the quadratic formula. We have checked ourselves on the graph. Let's try another problem. Number 2. So x squared minus 4x minus 21. Again, I think it's helpful, guys, if we all, as we're kind of getting used to this, write out what is a, what is b, what is c. So again, x is just squared here, so a is going to be equal to 1. B, again, it's equal this time to negative 4. Take that sign out front. And C is equal to, this time it's going to be negative 21. So I've got A, I've got B, and I've got C. First step, write your formula out. X equals negative B plus or minus square root B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. There you go. There's your formula. So x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And maybe you're not someone that likes to sing out loud. Sing it in your head. I promise you, every time. All right, let's go through and let's start plugging this one in now. So x is equal to negative 4. Now, some of us probably can start getting to this point now where we start to notice if I have a negative, it's going to actually make it into a positive, just like what we had up here on this first one, negative, 2. Two negatives make a positive, so I have 4 plus or minus the square root. Well, I'm taking the square root of negative 4 squared minus 4 times A, which is 1, times C, which is negative 21. So minus 4AC all over 2A. So I'm going to put this over 2 times 1. Go through and we simplify again. X is equal to now 4 plus or minus. Now let's work on that, what's underneath my square root symbol. So this time, negative 4 squared, that's going to give me 16. Negative 4 times negative 4. And now it's going to be negative 4 times 1 times negative 21. And that one is going to give you 84. So it's going to be 16 plus 84. All over 2. And we got 2 because 2 times 1. Go through and keep simplifying. So this time I'm going to get to my last step here before I break them apart. X is equal to, this time, 4 plus, 4 plus or minus, well, if I take 16 plus 84, that gives me 100. I take the square root of 100. All I'm doing is simplifying that. The square root of 100 is 10. All over 2. And now I'm getting to the point, now we need to break them up, because now we're getting to our 2 separate solutions here. So I'm going to have x is equal to 4 plus 10 over 2, and x is equal to 4 minus 10 over 2. Simplify them. 4 plus 10 is equal to 14, divided by 2. X is equal to 7. On the right-hand side, 4 minus 10, that's going to give us negative 6. Divide it by 2. X is equal to negative 3. So there is my 2 solutions. Again, if you'd like to, maybe feel more comfortable if you come over to your calculator and you were to check them. So x squared minus 4x minus 21. We go to graph. And hopefully, guys, you're not relying on your calculator to get all the answers, even though I know I'm not there with you at home to check over your work. You need to be working these out at home. That way you know how to use this formula. So I'm looking for when y is 0. So y is 0 at 7. There's my first answer. And then y is also 0 at negative 3. So there we go. We got it right. 7, negative 3. Let's look at another problem real quick before we move on. So number 3, this time x is not 1. Or excuse me, a is not 1. A is 5. This would probably be a good problem, guys, to maybe try on your own. Maybe hit the pause button, plug your numbers in, see how you do. Then once you finish, hit play, and you can kind of resume, watch me go through it, and then see how your answer checks out at the end. Even though A is not 1, as long as you still follow all the steps and you plug in the right number for A, you really should not get this one wrong. All right, so hopefully you went through and you did it on your own. And we're just going through checking it this time. So I already have went through. I've distinguished that A is equal to 5, B is equal to 12, C is equal to negative 2. And then I'm going through rewriting that formula. So x is equal to negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now let's go through and let's plug them in. So x is equal to, this time, guys, notice that b is positive. So it's a negative b. So I'm going to include that negative sign, and this one's going to be a negative 12. So negative 12 plus or minus, begin to take the square root. So I'm taking 12 squared minus 4 times a, which is 5. And again, this is another reason why I like having those parentheses, and times c, negative 2. Make sure you carry that square root symbol, guys, square root sign, that radical, all the way out until it stops over the c, showing that everything there needs to be taken to the square root. It all needs to be simplified under the square root symbol, under the radical. And then divide this by 2 times 5. All right, now let's go through and let's simplify this one. So x is equal to negative 12 plus or minus. Let's kind of attack this radical now. So I've got 12 squared. That's going to give me 144. And now let's take negative 4 times 5, which is negative 20, times negative 2. Negative 20 times negative 2, that's going to give me plus 40. And then for my denominator, 2 times 5 is 10. All right, let's go through and let's simplify one more time before we split this one apart. So this time x is equal to negative 12 plus or minus. Now, underneath my radical this time, guys, I'm taking 144 plus 40, and I'm taking the square root of 184. And this time, when you take the square root of 184, which again is just the 144 plus 40, you get this decimal. Anytime you get these decimals, let's go ahead and let's just round them to the, we'll round them to the hundredths. So it'll be 13.56. And then still all over 10. And this is another reason, guys, why we need to be familiar with this formula, because unlike our previous problems, this one is not going to come out as even numbers. They're going to come out as a decimal because of this 13.56. You need to be able to solve using this formula. Break them apart now. X is equal to negative 12 plus 13.56 divided by 10, and also x is equal to negative 12 minus 13.56. Having some camera troubles here. All still divided by 10. Go through and we punch both of those in. On the left, I have negative 12 plus 13.56 divided by 10. I'm going to get 0.156. So my first solution is x is equal to, and actually, guys, I haven't been doing it, but you would write this as x is equal to 0.156. And then for your next one, you can either put a comma, or you can just write it again as x is equal to whatever your next solution is. So this time it'd be negative 12 minus 13.56 divided by 10. And this time you get negative 2.556. And those are going to be your two solutions for this problem. All right. If anybody has any questions, guys, over the quadratic formula or solving the quadratic formula, or maybe a certain step in it, shoot me an email or leave me a question underneath our kind of class feed for this section here. All right. Let's go ahead and let's move on now. I've got two more questions for us.